Hello everybody and welcome back to Apple Gaming SE. This is news and opinions for February 25th through March 2nd, 2024. Coming to you with new subs this week, we are up 18 subscribers from 165 to 183. So thank you again for huge growth, phenomenal growth this week. The only verified subscriber I have is Mari_2007. who looks like Mari makes meme videos and shorts videos in Spanish. So if that is content that you're interested in, please go check out Mari's channel. Our first story this week is coming from Mobilegamer.biz. The article is titled Inside Apple Arcade, Axed Games, Declining Payouts, Disillusioned Studios, and an Uncertain Future. So this is apparently coming from... the way this article reads, it comes from one developer, maybe two, but basically there's a couple disgruntled developers who are, we'll say, disillusioned or feeling disenfranchised by the Apple Arcade ecosystem. The fourth paragraph in, which is really the fourth sentence, says this the best, quote, Apple is often aloof or difficult to work with, though as one developer noted, that's nothing new. While some describe their relationship with Apple as very positive and lucrative, others have said that Apple is famously vindictive and spiteful in its dealings with developers, especially once the tech giant discovers that you've signed a deal with the Netflix rival service, end quote. So this is really this is kind of two things about it. One, this is coming from, it sounds like a smaller group of Apple Arcade developers who are unhappy with the service, which is fair. They're allowed to be unhappy with the service agreements. If what they say about Apple's per-play bonus pool is correct, it sounds like it's a very inconsistent income. Supposedly, Apple also canceled we'll say, crap load of projects and pissed off a lot of people, according to one source. So it sounds like from some folks dealing with Apple, this is difficult. Apple, and this is one of the things that we have to worry about when it comes to Apple and its being a platform to build games on, it sounds like it might be difficult to work with, especially regarding smaller developers. Like working with Apple in Apple Arcade doesn't sound like it's the same thing as working on ID for Xbox, for example, right? Independent developers on Xbox. So you have these smaller indie devs that would get definitely a lot of, visibility being on Apple Arcade, and they should. But, at the same time, there's great games like Oceanhorn on there. Sega brought Sonic Dream Team exclusively to Apple Arcade. At least it's exclusive for now. It's difficult to say how accurate these claims are. I will say it does make a certain degree of sense when it comes to Apple by saying, if you're working on our platform, we don't want you on a rival service, right? They did this for a long time with App Store pricing. You cannot charge a separate fee out of the App Store that's cheaper than, say, in the App Store. So if you have an in-app purchase that's $1.99 in the App Store, you can't offer that same in-app purchase through a different payment process for 99 cents. So it kind of makes sense that Apple wants that degree of exclusivity for their platform. Way back in the day when Apple News first started, there were a ton, and I mean a ton of gripes from publishers on the Apple News platform that they were not getting the metrics from readers that they wanted, right? So Apple's position was basically, it's our customer and you're putting your content on our platform for our customer. So Apple did not provide the same level of data on the readership that the publishers have been accustomed to with other platforms and, we'll say, other means of distribution like newspapers or RSS feeds or online services separate from the Apple News service. So Apple does indeed tightly control these things. There's no doubt about that. But is it bad for everybody? I don't know. I mean, you have here in the story, they say that it's very lucrative for many of these developers. What did they say? Apple is the relationship with Apple is very positive and lucrative. So I don't think that we can say this is a universal statement. but there's definitely going to be people who are unhappy with the service. It doesn't work for their financial model. If it is true that Apple is kind of like axing these projects, halfway or 3/4 of the way through development, it's probably not good, and they're going to continue to get away with it. One developer is claiming that Netflix continues to do what they're doing because it's requiring Apple to continue to try to be relevant and competitive. And they also said that Google also needs to come to the space with something compelling. Google Play Pass is actually pretty good for developers, but it's marketed terribly. I think that depends. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of developers who don't develop exclusively for Android because of the high variability in the hardware market for Android. So there's many games that will not run or not run well on Android because they have, a MediaTek SoC or an Exynos SoC. So you really got to kind of figure out that Google has a different issue with that. And I think that it's going to continue to be an uphill battle for Google and developers so long as the hardware platforms are so diverse. This isn't like AMD and NVIDIA where they basically have a duopoly on the gaming market on the PC side of things. So we'll see how it goes. We'll continue to watch this story and see what develops. It was definitely an interesting read this week. It was the most interesting for sure. But with that said, let's go on to some other news. Speaking of hardware, M3 Macs join Apple's DIY repair program. So this is all M3 Macs. This is the M3 iMac, M3 14-inch, and 16-inch MacBook Pros. So this is great that users now have, or owners, I should say, now have the option of repairing their hardware without needing to go to an Apple store. I don't think it covers every single component, things like screens, for example. I don't know if that falls under the self-service program. I haven't actually looked into what all can be done. I know the iPhone program reasonably well, but not the Mac side of things. Anyway, it's cool that you can get the parts. If you are on the right to repair bandwagon, this isn't really going to do anything for the right to repair cause, because Apple's role in this is kind of like a compliance to avoid regulation, if you will. So as long as Apple remains the only source to get compatible parts for Macs, it's not going to be significantly better. I've seen a number of videos online that have said price-wise, this is pretty much the same as if you take it into the store or a third-party Apple authorized service provider. So you might save a little bit of time, but you're not really going to save any money. So I think that's the issue. I'd have to read through the terms and conditions, but presumably the parts for the self-service program are generally either, in the past, under warranties, Apple has stated that their parts will be new or refurbished at the discretion of the Apple. It has been my experience with Apple that refurbished products are incredibly high quality and they really are like new, but to be still selling like logic boards for $600, $700, $800 on, a product that costs $1,100 is kind of bonkers, So, but I get it. You're replacing the SoC, you're replacing all of the logic that runs through the board, you're replacing the memory chips, the storage, everything. So I get why it's so expensive, but there's something to be said for having the ability to be a little more fine-tuned or to source parts from a third party. They can still be Apple genuine parts, but maybe a third party could offer them to you cheaper. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, mind you, but it would be cool if we could see it. Anyway, M3 Macs are now in the DIY repair program if you need your M3 Mac serviced. Our next story is coming from 9to5Mac, and it says, no Apple event planned for new Mac and iPad launches. This is according to Mark Gurman from Bloomberg. And in his Power On newsletter, he is saying that the products are expected to come out in March, iPad Pro, iPad Air, and MacBook Air, but they will just be press releases. It will not be a full-blown event. So Gurman reiterates that there's a lot coming from Apple within the next month, even if no special event is planned, which is unfortunate because it's always fun to see what the marketing team comes up with for the big keynotes. So there is something that you kind of miss from the olden days of Apple where, you got up on stage and everything was demoed to you live, but now you have these very stylized, high-quality productions that go on. It's a little more fun with Apple, but it doesn't feel as necessarily as accessible. Now, things like the Vision Pro had an in-person event where much of the media got to put their hands on them beforehand. And I want to say the same was true for the iPhone 15. So it's not like they no longer exist, but I just kind of miss it, that we would have all of these great keynotes every year with a lot of in-person stuff. But anyway, this month coming, no special event is the rumor, but we are definitely looking at iPad Pros, iPad Airs, M3 MacBook Air, a new Apple Pencil, and a Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro. The iPad Pro is also rumored to have an OLED display, which one is about time, and two, though there's a lot of great possibilities for that, with the always-on display options. So hopefully we'll be seeing that here in the coming weeks, and looking forward to it for sure. Last headline for this week is also from 9to5Mac. Apple is hit with a class action lawsuit over iCloud's 5 GB limit. So the super short version of this is that on Apple devices, there are things that are considered restricted files. That's device settings, apps, and app data. And then there's what are called accessible files. So these are photos and videos, generally multimedia, that kind of stuff. And Apple mobile device holders can select from other cloud-based providers who are servicing the market, such as Google Drive, Sync.com, pCloud, and others, and you can store all your multimedia on there. But you cannot store your device settings or your apps or your app data on any service except iCloud. And because Apple is only offering 5 GB of storage, that is overwhelmingly not enough for most people's Apple devices to back up their apps. Where for me this kind of falls flat on its face a little bit is the fact that you can back up your phone to a PC or a Mac and then take that the backup file itself and actually put it up onto a different cloud service. From my own self-interest point of view on this, my concern is that if this were to go through and Apple were to be found at fault, the court may require Apple to build in a mechanism that allows device settings as well as apps and app data to get moved onto these other rival platforms. And my concern there is that it would then create potentials for someone else to get into your data, right? One of my big gripes with iCloud is, when it comes to backups, is that when and Apple is the only one who decides this, when an iCloud backup moves into what Apple considers an archival stage, they will actually bundle your iCloud backups, usually the old backups, with other people's, and then they'll encrypt this huge data blob, and then they'll store it with a different provider, either Google or Amazon or Microsoft. You don't get to choose if that data goes over there. You don't get to choose which provider it goes to. Given the option, I would never give my stuff to Google. I've had issues with Google in terms of privacy in the past. That's a me decision. That's not a Google is an evil corporation opinion. That is just my personal issue with Google. So I don't want that to ever be a thing. It's one of the reasons I like Apple's ecosystem, is that I have not been screwed over in that way, that I have not had these data breaches occur to me. Not that they don't occur, they have, not at the incompetency of Apple, but usually as a result of a problematic implementation on the user end. And I think that potentially opening up the Apple ecosystem to others to allow for this creates more, we'll say, variables that it could create a larger attack surface. And so just from my own selfish point of view, that's how I feel about it. Now, I do understand the argument, however. It's your device. So you should be able to put your data and your apps and your app data wherever you want to put it. And if you if you have a great relationship with Google and you want to put it up on Google Drive, you should be able to do that. And Apple should not be able to tell you that you can't do that. Or it could be Sync.com or pCloud, or if you want to do it on Microsoft's OneDrive, whatever. You just want a data storage bucket like up on AWS. Like, you could go and do that, right? So totally get it. I understand the ethical argument. I just don't think that. I think there's an ethical argument also to say, because there's a group of people that doesn't like the way Apple is doing things, they should have the ability to force Apple to open up for a matter of market convenience. Ultimately the court will decide that, but it just feels slimy to me, right? Like, this just feels like a money grab from the group that's the plaintiff that's attempting to sue Apple on this. Now, I also totally agree. I mean, the free tier of iCloud is only 5 gigabytes, and it's been 5 gigabytes for 13 years now. It was introduced in 2011. So yeah, I would love to have 10 gigabytes in iCloud, or 15 gigs, like is the norm. I think in Google Drive, if you get a free Google Drive, you get 15 gigs. So of course you can make arguments about data scraping, so you're not really getting it for free, you're paying with your data. So I understand that, and Apple being a hardware business, they want to sell you a device, right? And that things like iCloud are the profits that basically lubricate things like offsetting device costs and so forth. So anyway, just my opinion on the matter. I hope Apple wins this one, but I understand the argument from the other side for sure. And that is it for news and opinions this week. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions or concerns, please leave them in the comments down below or hit me up on Twitter at AppleGamingSE. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next live stream and the next news and opinions video. Take care now and have a great week. Bye-bye.
An opening! A chance! There! I'm going! Yeah! Now! Now!
Right!
It's my go. Yeah!